What if the war in Burkina Faso isn't really about terrorism? What if the true battle is over something far more insidious, imperialism masked as insecurity? What if, beneath every drone strike, landmine, and ambush, there lies a calculated effort to keep a proud nation trapped in a loop of conflict, just so its gold can flow out quietly, enriching others while its people remain impoverished? These aren't just abstract questions. They're the unspoken truths behind Burkina Faso's long, painful journey through violence, abandonment, and now, against all odds, resurgence. In 2025, despite the chaos and the exit of Western corporations, the country's gold production is not only stable, it's rising. And that single fact tells a story the world is not prepared to hear. For decades, Burkina Faso was treated like a minefield, both literally and politically. Corporations swarmed in when it was safe, digging and hauling billions in gold while offering crumbs in return. But when the situation turned volatile, when explosions and instability began to spread, they vanished almost overnight. The West called it security concerns, but the deeper reality is more uncomfortable. They left not because the gold ran out, but because the Burkinabe people were finally starting to ask hard questions. Who really owns this land? Who profits from our pain? And most importantly, why should we keep bleeding while others keep winning? In the dust of deserted equipment and sealed tunnels, a quiet revolution began to take shape. What many assumed was the end of Burkina Faso's mining industry was actually the beginning of something far more profound. This wasn't just about restarting old mines, it was about reclaiming ownership. In 2025, the government unveiled data that shocked observers. Industrial gold production was projected to rise by over 4%, hitting 55.7 metric tons. That figure may seem small to some, but in the global gold economy, a few percentage points can shift billions and power. What's even more important is how this recovery came to be. Not through new discoveries, not through foreign aid, but through bold strategy and national will. Two major sites tell the story best: the Yuga mine in the south and the Kiaka mine in the southeast. These were once symbols of Burkina Faso's potential, abandoned when things got hard. But now they're being revived with precision and intent. Yuga, once thought defunct, resumed activity under Seoul Resources International Latatique in late 2024. Trucks hum through its gates, drills pierce the soil, and workers, many of them locals, rebuild what was left in ruins. Kiaka, on the other hand, has yet to begin production, but all signs point to a monumental launch by late 2025. It's not just about the gold in the ground, it's about the timing. Kiaka is rising after the giants left. It's stepping into a vacuum and filling it. This isn't an accident. It's a recalibration. Rather than racing to find new veins or woo foreign firms, Burkina Faso has chosen a different path, one of introspection and resurrection. It's choosing to invest in what was already there, resources ignored, sites abandoned, potential overlooked. By doing so, it sends a powerful message. We don't need to start over. We just need to reclaim what's ours. And let's take a moment right now to thank the incredible viewers and loyal members of our Voice of Africa community. Your support makes it possible to shine a light on the stories the mainstream often ignores. If you believe in African ownership, sovereignty, and truth, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Your engagement keeps us strong, independent, and inspired. Now back to the heart of the story. The recovery of Yuga and Kiaka may be exciting, but it's only part of the picture. Because if the gold still flows out of the country unchecked, if profits vanish offshore while communities remain poor, then nothing has truly changed. The real battle isn't just in the mines, it's in the laws. It's in the contracts, the regulations, and the fine print that determines who gets rich and who gets robbed. That's why the real turning point came not with the restart of operations, but with the rewriting of Burkina Faso's mining code. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who came to power in 2022, the state began reshaping itself, not just as a military actor, but as an economic architect. Traoré understood something that many African leaders have tragically ignored. Natural resources mean nothing if you don't control them. In fact, without ownership, resources become a curse, a magnet for exploitation and manipulation. So, instead of chasing quick wins, Traoré's administration began the slow, deliberate work of changing the very structure of the mining sector. This wasn't just a tweak to policy, it was a transformation. The new mining code gave the state a larger role, not only as a regulator but as a participant. Foreign companies were no longer allowed to operate in secrecy, shielded by loopholes and offshore accounts. They now had to recognize the Burkina Faso state as a true partner, with shares, expectations, and enforceable rights. The reforms demanded transparency, mandatory revenue sharing, and a commitment to funnel more profits directly into the national budget and the Mineral Wealth Fund. No longer could companies simply extract and vanish. They had to invest in the country that fed them. And what made these reforms truly brilliant was their timing. Western corporations were already jittery. The rise of anti-imperialist sentiment across the Sahel, fueled by military transitions and growing public awareness, had made many companies nervous. Security risks were rising. Trust was eroding. So when Burkina Faso introduced tougher laws, it didn't face resistance. It faced silence. Many of the companies were already on their way out. The government wasn't scaring them off. It was sealing the door behind them and putting new rules in place before anyone else could step in. This new legal environment began to reshape everything. Companies like Fortuna Silver Mines, a Canadian giant, decided to sell their stake in the Yaramoko mine for $130 million to a local firm. The official reason? Declining reserves. But insiders knew better. Burkina Faso was no longer the land of easy profits. Under the new code, every ounce of gold now passed through a web of taxes, accountability, and local obligations. The days of quiet looting were over. Of course, the Western media didn't celebrate. Some called it resource nationalism. Others predicted doom, claiming the reforms would scare off investment. But on the ground, in towns and villages where people have seen the gold trucks pass for years without any change to their lives, the reaction was very different. For them, this was justice, a long overdue correction to an exploitative system. Finally, a leader was saying, Burkina Faso's gold belongs to Burkina Faso. But this also raises a deeper question, perhaps the most important of all. Can a country that has been systematically plundered for decades truly turn the tide? Can it build a new economy on its own terms, under the weight of ongoing attacks and political pressure? The answer may not come easily, but the direction is clear. This isn't about charity or even fairness. It's about sovereignty. And in 2025, Burkina Faso is daring to believe that it can write its own story. Not in the language of dependence, but in the language of ownership. The use of landmines, the arrival of military-trained insurgents, and the rise of drone-equipped terrorists are no coincidences. When you dig deeper, you find the fingerprints of imperial powers who have every interest in keeping Burkina Faso unstable. Because a country in permanent crisis can't regulate its mines, it can't enforce its laws, it can't build schools, hospitals, or roads with its own money. And that suits the exploiters just fine. But what happens when that country refuses to stay down? What happens when it restarts the machines, rewrites the contracts, and says, no more? That's what we're witnessing now. A quiet, deliberate defiance. A shift from victimhood to agency. Yes, the mines are running again. But more importantly, the rules are changing. For the first time in decades, the gold is not just flowing, it's being claimed. And maybe that's why the attacks haven't stopped. Maybe that's why instability still lingers, because the stakes are high. This isn't just about Burkina Faso. It's about every African nation trying to stand up and say, "We will no longer be plundered." The future is uncertain, and the road ahead is steep. But what's happening in Burkina Faso right now matters, not just for its people, but for the continent. It's a test of will, of sovereignty, and of whether Africa can finally break the chains of economic imperialism. And if Burkina Faso succeeds, if it can hold the line, keep the mines running, and enforce its laws, then the whole world will have to take notice. Because it means something profound, that even in the darkest of times, even in the grip of conflict, a nation can choose to rise, not just in resistance, but in vision. Thank you for watching. Let's keep the conversation going. Share this story far and wide, and never stop demanding a future where African resources finally serve African people.